In this video, we'll be going over the May 13th ban list and explaining why certain cards got hit. This is simultaneously one of the biggest and smallest ban lists the game has ever seen, so it's going to be a weird one to talk about. We'll start by covering the biggest changes made to Legacy, Vintage, and Pauper ban lists. The banning of every single sticker and attraction card, a total of 56 cards. These are both mechanics introduced in this set on Infinity, and they've been controversial since their initial printing. Let's start by explaining exactly how these mechanics work. Stickers are a mechanic that require bringing 10 unique sticker sheets that were printed as token cards in this set. At the beginning of the game, you choose 3 of these sheets to use for the game. Whenever the ability of a card, such as Command Performance, would put a sticker on a card you own, you would look at those sticker sheets and choose one of the stickers to place on your cards. Some of these stickers would also cost tickets, which are counters you can get from cards such as Ambassador Blorpity Bloop, who would give you 3 tickets with its Enter the Battlefield trigger. So if you would put a sticker on one of your cards, you could play 2 tickets to put the double exalted sticker onto one of your creatures. The most interesting part of this mechanic is that these stickers would persist between certain zones. If a card you put a sticker onto would be exiled or put into the graveyard, it would keep all those stickers. So if it gets reanimated, it would maintain its altered stats and extra abilities. However, if it was returned to your hand or the library, the stickers would fall off. That covers the first of the mechanics. But we still have attractions to go over. Attractions are also kept in a separate attraction deck that's presented at the start of the game. It consists of 10 unique cards. When you open an attraction, such as the Monitor's Enter the Field ability, you take the top card of your attraction deck and put it onto the battlefield. These attractions all have a series of numbers on the side, 1 through 6, with some lit and some not lit. These numbers come into play during your first main phase each turn. At that point, you roll a 6-sided die. Then you take the result and see if it matches any of the lit numbers on your attractions. If it does, you visit those attractions, which trigger any of the appropriate abilities on said attractions. Attractions are also technically artifacts on the battlefield, so they get removed with shatter and the like, but they don't go to the graveyard or any other zone when interacted with. Because instead, they go to a special zone called the junkyard. This is mostly to prevent anything weird from happening, like someone having a truly uncastable card in their hand. Now that we know these mechanics do, we need to go over a lot of the context surrounding these cards. Infinity is the most recent of the unsets, a series of joke sets that aren't legal for sanctioned play. However, Infinity had some cards that were legal in tournaments, and some joke cards that weren't. This was denoted by the acorn symbol on the bottom of some of the cards. So if you wanted to know if a card was legal in Legacy or not, you look at the bottom of the card for any acorns. If there was no acorn, it was fair game. This decision in of itself was controversial, but it was made worse by the sticker and attraction mechanics having legal cards amongst them. The attractions were very similar to the old contraption mechanic from a previous unset. Most players didn't want these mechanics in a tournament for a host of reasons we'll cover momentarily. Wizards recognized this and had purposely tried to keep the mechanics at lower power levels so they didn't end up impacting the meta. The idea was, if you wanted to play these cards, you'd be allowed to, but they wouldn't really change the way the game was played because they'd just be worse than playing a real deck. A perfect compromise between casual and competitive play, right? Unsurprisingly, one of these cards ended up being far too playable. Enter Blank Goblin, or just called Name Sticker Goblin, or Mind Goblin if people were feeling particularly cheeky. This little guy is pretty much the entire reason these cards got hit. This is a 2/2 Goblin guess with a mana cost of 2 and 1 red. It is the ability where, when it enters the field, you put a name sticker on it. Then you add 1 red for each vowel in that sticker. Essentially, this was a 3 mana 2/2 that would make you somewhere between 1 to 6 red mana when it entered the field. And of course, you would choose sticker sheets that maximize the likelihood of Name Sticker Goblin paying out. On its own, this isn't all that impressive. Cards like Ardent Electromancer also add a good amount of mana when they enter the field, and have been anywhere between very good and unplayable depending on the support. Now, what broke Name Sticker Goblin was the card's creature type, because goblins are one of the most heavily supported tribes in the entire game. Goblins have tons of ways to cheat themselves into play. The most important of which is Muxus Goblin Grandee. This is a 6-drop creature that lets you look at the top 6 cards of your deck when it enters the field, then cheats out any goblin that costs 5 or less, including a Name Sticker Goblin. So if you resolved 1 Muxus and hit a Name Sticker Goblin, you can add a ton of mana to extend your board even more. If you're lucky enough, you could cast another Muxus to cheat out even more creatures, but most of the time, you would use Battlecry Goblin to give all your goblins +1 power and haste and swing for game. Ultimately, this isn't all that different from how goblin decks have been playing for years, but the fact that it was utilizing a sticker card instantly created issues. First off, Name Sticker Goblin works entirely different on MTG Go, the only digital way to play Legacy or Vintage. There, it's a goblin with the same stats and costs, but the mana it adds is based on the roll of a d20. It also has a lot of other restrictions meant to mimic the sticker mechanic, but no matter how many extra words you put on the card, there will be mechanical differences. This creates a split in the MTG Go Legacy metagame and the Paper Legacy metagame, which is something that Wizards tries to avoid. This alone is an issue, but it gets far worse from there. First off, the sticker mechanic has a lot of practical issues. While you can use homemade sticker sheets so you don't have to worry about losing stickers or anything, that requires going and making a substitute for the sticker sheets yourselves. This is a huge practical issue. Players were doing things like creating a series of marked sleeves that were different combination stickers to help keep track of game states they would use in lieu of actual stickers. Normally, there would be a bit of a silver lining to the situation in the fact that only certain players would have to worry about the mechanic. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. If you were playing a powerful clone effect like Phyrexian Metamorph, you would be unable to use Name Sticker Goblin's effect because you didn't have any stickers to put on your clone. Sure, that only mattered for one deck, but being able to copy a Name Sticker Goblin was a huge play. This then spirals out a bit more, as now knowing if a player has or doesn't have a sticker deck immediately gives away information, as it tells them what deck they're on. Players may have begun bringing sticker decks just to bluff being on goblins exactly if the deck remained meta relevant for long enough. This was essentially the worst case scenario. Games were being decided by the sticker mechanic, and sometimes being decided simply by if a player had bothered to put together a sticker deck at all. This is all on top of the sizable issue and differences between digital and paper play that the card had created. All of this led Wizards to wanting to ban Name Sticker Goblin. However, this leaves a big question mark on stickers and by extension, attractions as a mechanic. Was Name Sticker Goblin only the first of many problematic cards of the mechanic? Would petting Zookeeper and the like end up breaking the format next? It wouldn't be the first time that a commander and limited focus mechanic ended up having a huge impact on eternal formats. The second any of these cards are discovered to be playable, you would end up right in the same situation. Wizards decided to take a better safe than sorry approach and ban all 56 cards with these mechanics to ensure that players didn't need to worry about them in Legacy or Vintage anymore. Now, some players may still be skeptical of these bans. After all, can't Wizards get their act together and simply implement these mechanics on MTG Go to fix the gap in playability? And why should the old grumpy Legacy and Vintage players not immediately liking a mechanic mean it should remain strictly casual? Answering the first point, no. Wizards cannot put these mechanics onto MTG Go. If you don't know, MTG Go is a client from 2002 and looks the part. Tons of mechanics are very difficult to implement on the client, and some like attractions and stickers would be outright impossible. Skullbriar the Walking Grave was infamous for causing crashes on the client when it released, and the sticker and attraction mechanics would consistently be more difficult to MTG Go's poor, broken engine. Seriously, the client is basically held together with gum and toothpicks. It can't handle these kinds of cards. Secondly, attractions and stickers are very, very far out of Magic's usual wheelhouse. It's very similar to Companion in how it puts far too much emphasis on cards outside the deck and gameplay. There's also very random mechanics. Games could be determined by whether a player hits a bomb attraction off of their first attraction card, and that's not really a type of gameplay that Magic players like, nor is it something you can realistically account for. There's also the fact that different printings of the attractions have different numbers lit, meaning that exact printing of a card will actually affect gameplay, something no other card does and that Magic purposefully avoids. Wizards never wanted these cards to be competitive, thanks to all the reasons we've listed so far. Overall, everyone is happier simply not having to deal with these cards. Pauper saw a small but noticeable impact from the banned announcements. While there were not enough legal attractions to even play an attraction deck, sticker cards had appeared to some degree in the format. Sticker Goblin saw play for similar reasons it saw play in other formats. It would provide mana consistently enough that it was worth playing in red Goblin shells and thus necessitated engaging with the sticker mechanic. This proved especially problematic for MTG Go, which is the most popular place for Pauper, where the card could not function the same as in paper. In fact, decks also dealt with stickers via command performance, which could both give you tickets to pay for stickers and also allow you to apply those stickers in the same spell resolution. Instead of relying on pump spells, the deck would modify the base stats and abilities of their infect creatures via the sticker cards. These changes were less about dressing an imbalanced metagame and more about addressing the problems that came from implementing stickers into MTG Go and the hassle they add to optimal paper play. The more targeted banning that hit Pauper was All That Glitters. This aura enchantment costs 1 generic and 1 white mana and gives target creature +1 power and toughness for each artifact and enchantment you control. Historically, this card has been very strong in white-based affinity shells in the format given the high density of artifacts that can swarm the field with. In recent times, however, more and more decks have come into prominence with an artifact focus or sub-theme that the cards began to splash into more decks across the format. Experimental Synthesizer decks leveraged all that glitters to help add some benefits to sitting on their namesake card until a more opportune time to use it. Core Skyfisher can reset the enchantment onto a better creature in the late game, which will usually be itself given that it has flying. It, or a Glint Hawk, can make for a sizable aerial threat that puts your opponent on a pretty fast clock with even just a handful of artifacts. There was some consideration for banning some of the artifact lands, given that they're one of the key culprits for all that glitters getting out of hand. But given that all that glitters has cross-pollinated into other archetypes and decks, they deemed it was worth hitting on its own before potentially addressing the artifact lands again on a future ban list. And those were all the hits on the May 13th ban list. While technically banning a huge number of cards, the overall impact on the game was much smaller than a lot of the other ban lists in the past. Overall, the ban list mostly feels like cleaning up a few mistakes made in the past than it does a huge shakeup to the metagame.